So should I just drop it on the floor?
Yes. We should make an intro. Be like, oh, we got a surprise guest.
Hiring process when...
Are all the cameras on?
Welcome to the Tech Show, and today we're here with Dave Fox, the CEO of Focus GTS. We're here to talk about building out your IT team and whether or not you should be involved in the hiring process. Dave, I know that this is a very painful topic for you, and this is something that you run into a lot. A lot of the clients you work with always talk about having being involved in the hiring process.
Yeah.
So what is your thought? I know that a lot of the IT leaders in the space don't believe that they should be involved in the hiring process, and they always send you off to HR or send your people to HR. So what is your take on that?
I think IT leaders need to really start to take control over their hiring process, because at the end of the day, it's your people that make you successful. So if you are like, oh, this is just something I pass off to HR, or I'm not involved in which vendors I use, it's like a lot of companies complicate things. And being a company that we have our own firm now, right, you begin to see the bigger a company gets, the more convoluted and complicated it can get. But it doesn't need to be that way. Companies need to be thinking about how they can make their processes simple and give these hiring managers complete control over which vendors they use and all that stuff. There's no problem with having specific terms that your company adheres to, but I think it's really important that these people are in control because it's their future, it's their team.
What is it about IT and HR that they don't want involved in the hiring process?
One of the ways in which I think IT leaders bring HR in, it's not just the vendor list issue, but it's also like they'll bring them in to do like first interviews and stuff like that. And this is really, really crazy, because you need to be the front door to your team, and you're having somebody be the front door to your team that isn't even accountable to you. So this person is talking about your team, yet they're not in your team, so they don't know what it's actually like. Their only form of understanding what's been going on there is just what you tell them, which we all know how communication gets lost, right? So that's one way. And then they are going to be judging people on something that they don't really know anything about. And you can argue about this fact, but most HR recruiters are not specializing in certain technologies. If they're having the first conversation, they don't know enough about your specific need to be able to have that first conversation. So I really think hiring managers need to take more ownership to look at all the resumes, decide who they want to interview, and don't leave it to someone else. This is your team, this is your future. If you want it to be successful, you need to take ownership of it. It's not something you should just pass off to someone else.
Right, and how do you think it gets affected? Like, how have you seen managers get affected by passing it on?
I think you could miss out on amazing candidates because, they might judge them on the resume. There might be a technology that alludes to another technology that someone that is technical would understand, but someone in HR might miss, and then a candidate slips through the cracks that could be fantastic for the team. There's other things, like a lot of times people judge individuals based off their resume, and they miss out on soft skills. They miss out on ability to pick things up quickly. We all know, we live in a day and age now where it's not so much about do you know the answer to this, it's can you figure out the answer to this. There's so much knowledge at our fingertips with the internet that we have to be able to figure out things.
Right. How do you think that would contribute to a success of a manager who's leading a team or an IT department when they actually pick and choose their talent instead of passing it on or handing it off? I know that they get really busy, and I'm sure there's a lot going on in the day and the process and everything else, and then there's all these other rules within the company, and each one I'm sure has their own. So do you feel like that they're missing out on certain talent, or do you feel like they're missing out on personal growth as well as holding their company back by not being innovative and not getting involved themselves?
I do. I think if you want to be responsible for the success of your team, you need to be responsible for the places where your team falls short too, and you need to take ownership of everything. So they need to, the time, in my opinion, in which HR should be involved is once you've been like, okay, this is a person I want to hire, then give it to them to do all the onboarding and all that stuff. That's like busy work that you as a hiring manager shouldn't have to deal with. But everything up to that point should be you. HR shouldn't write your job description. You're in the team. Take ownership of it and write your own job description. HR, like I said, shouldn't be having the first conversation with your people. You should. HR shouldn't be screening resumes for you. You should. These are things that if you want to get ahead, you need to do it. And everybody's like, oh, I don't have time. Well, make time, because this is one of the most important things. Everybody says people are the most important part of their success, yet not everybody's willing to make the sacrifices to like really align themselves with what that means.
Yeah. What about when actually going through resumes and stuff like that? I'm sure that takes a lot of time, and people get busy. So how do you take on that issue? What do you think? What would your advice be to them? Because I know it's tedious, it's time consuming.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work vetting and scanning candidates through as well. So how do you find that middle ground where you're not overwhelmed by it, but at the same time you take ownership?
I think you need to know what your outcome is. What is it that I really want? Most people, if you broke it down, you want an A player on your team. Okay, so if you want an A player on your team, what does that mean to have an A player on your team? What defines an A player for your team? And then know, okay, how long am I willing to spend on a resume? Okay, I'm willing to spend a minute on every one. What is that? That's not that much. I think what happens is a lot of people end up thinking that things take longer than they actually do, and therefore they have paralysis analysis and never get started. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't take as long as people think. If you block off that time and say, during this time, I'm going to be reviewing resumes and scheduling interviews. It's not that. And again, as a leader, what's important is that you are prioritizing the things that are most important. If we all agree people are most important, it shouldn't matter how long it takes. If it's a priority, you get it done.
Right, definitely. So I know that I've been spending a lot of time on the sales floor, and I've been hearing the recruiters say things like when they see a job description, for example, for a data scientist, and then they would read through it, and then they would be like, this is not a data scientist, this is a data analyst.
Yeah.
So is that something that you're seeing also HR make the mistakes that with the job titles and descriptions and things like that?
This can definitely happen. And I think this comes back to something that's an even bigger issue that I've talked about before, is that we live in a world that's digital, yet we still use resumes. And yeah, resumes are digital, it's a Word or a PDF, but at the end of the day, it's like everything's video now. We've seen so much success with people actually sending in a video to show who they are along with the resume. There are things that you can put in your process that are going to make it easier and I think smoother, and things like that are going to help you avoid candidates falling through the cracks.
So would you say that especially with the lack of talent in the market, and then when you pass it on to someone else, and then you add more steps to it,
Yeah.
do you think you lose even more candidates, and then with the longer process?
Longer processes are going to cost you candidates, because what you have to realize at the end of the day, the goal as a hiring manager, everybody wants the best talent there is. I don't think there's anybody that you talk to and be like, hey, you need a new member for your team, and they're like, yeah, I just need someone really average. Like, nobody's going to say that. They all want the best. But what people need to realize is the best have options. And options means that time kills deals. That's what we say in sales all the time. And at the end of the day, when you're trying to hire someone, you're trying to sell them on coming to your company, especially if they're really good. In the interview, they're selling you on them, but at the end of the day, once you want them, you need to sell them on your company. The faster that you can condense the process and make it more efficient, the better it's going to be for you. You're going to lose less candidates because, like I said, time kills deals. So what managers really need to be asking is, how can I have the shortest process without sacrificing any due diligence? And that's the question that they need to be asking when they're setting up the process, because if they don't do that, they're going to have these longer drawn-out processes. They need to look at each step. Okay, first we do this, then there's this screen, and then there's this, and then we have to get these people together. How can you combine that and make it very quick? You should be able to hire someone, even if you had to do 3 interviews. There's no reason that you can't make that happen all in a week.
So everything's a revolution in the job description, a
Yeah.
revolution in the resume. Do you think that an IT department should have their own hiring process?
Yeah.
Apart from
Because here's the deal, IT's everything now. Because of AI and data science, every company is going to have to become an IT company. So that means that the demand for IT skills is going to go up even more. And it's not every IT skill, but like key things, the things that are in high demand, they're going to go into even more demand. And yes, we're going to have more people with that skill set, but I think the demand is going to grow faster than the supply grows. So yeah, definitely 100%, an IT department needs to be asking that exact same questions. How can we compress our time from when we first open a role to getting it filled?
Yeah.
The average time in the United States right now for IT role to be filled, a full-time role, is 63 days. And what's even crazier is that amount of time has been getting longer every single year. Doesn't make sense. Everything else is getting shorter. Now you can buy something on Amazon and get it the same day. Like Uber, I want to get a taxi, I don't have to call and wait, it's instant. But yet hiring is taking longer
Why do you think that's happening?
because we're overthinking it. We're making it too complicated. We need to be very outcome focused, know exactly how, it needs to just be this simple. What do you need? Why do you need it? And what requirements meet that? That's it.
That's very simple, straight to the point. So I guess to finish that off, what would your advice be? What is your advice to hiring managers in the IT department and the steps they need to take in order to make successful hires in their department? What do they need to do? Do they need to step up and go speak up in a meeting maybe and talk about that I want to take control of the process? I would like to have a recruiter on my team, or I would like to be involved in vendor selection list
Yeah.
because these are the issues we're having.
Yeah.
So what would you say like their action steps would be?
I think step one is you need to get passionate about being in control and understand the value of being in control. And if you aren't, you might need to reassess why you're even there in the first place. If you're not excited about your job, if you're not, like, that's a whole other issue. Once you get there, then you have to be very vocal about it, because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Isn't that the right? So the louder you are, the more that people are going to pay attention to it. So you need to identify what are the issues and then eliminate them. And guess what? At the end of the day, it might be a little scary at first, right? Because it creates some friction. You're telling people, I think there's a better way. But when you implement that better way and you get better results, guess what? There's no more friction. All of a sudden, now you're the hero. And that's what everybody wants to do.
I know that at Focus GTS, that's something that you talk about all the time. Is that something that you feel like the company should be incorporating in the process that you've created?
Yeah, I would actually make this very bold claim. I would be hard pressed to find a company that has a recruitment process that we can't make better.
So you would say you can make any process pretty much better.
Yeah. Try me. Try me.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you today. We've had a great conversation. It was nice having you as our guest.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.